Text is used all the time when editing videos, and without animations, it can be extremely boring. Animations don't need to be fancy and over the top. Sometimes just adding in a simple zoom and fade or camera shake is all that you need. Other times you do want to do some crazy animations. Either way, you're going to run into something called keyframes, and a lot of people do not like them. Even if you fully understand how they work and are great at using them, they take up a lot of time throughout an edit. That's what whip text from the EditorCollection is for. I call it the text plus tool on steroids. It's integrated with my Anim engine, so you can create simple or complex animations in just a few clicks without the need for keyframes. You can even do a follower animation right on the edit page. In this video, we're going to be creating 4 text animations with whip text, and you'll be blown away by how fast it is. In DaVinci Resolve, whip text is found in the effects library under titles, and it's just a drag and drop template. When you first add it to your timeline, you can change stuff like the text, the font color, the size, position, all of that stuff. Where the actual magic happens is over in the next tab, the Anim tab. First, we have the global Anim engine. This allows us to change all of the animation settings instead of using keyframes. Below that is everything we can animate. So, the big ones, the size, position, rotate. You can even do right-on animations, add blur, change the opacity, all of that stuff. With any of these, you can just come into the drop-down and click Enable. When I do that, I'm going to go back to the beginning and hit play. Just with that one click, it's going to animate from the start size of 0 to the resting size over a period of 1 second. And it's super easy to change. We don't have to mess around with keyframes and getting that timing right. I can just come up to the animation length and set this to 2, and now the animation at both the start and end is 2 seconds long. And the nice thing is we can make this as long as we want, and it's going to automatically update that animation so it's still 2 seconds at the beginning and end. If you want, you can toggle off the in and out animation so that way it stays on at the end. Or if we hit custom, we can change the out animation length separate from the in animation length. All right, to build out this animation, let's bring the size up a little bit. So let's put it around 0.07. Now what this does is starts at this size and then scales up to the resting size. At the first frame, we're also going to come down to the blur option and hit enable blur. This is a little too intense, so let's just bring the start blur size down. And now when we hit play, it's going to zoom up and come into focus. What I wanted to do now is slide up and then do the size and blur animation. The system's set up to make this extremely easy to do. I'm going to close the blur and the size and come down to the position animation. When I enable that, it's going to slide up with the size and the blur animation. In each of these controls, I have the option to unlink the animation. So that means it won't be tied to this global animation up top. If I do that, it has all of its own controls. And in this case, it's going to look the same because they're identical with the global anim engine up top here. Since the blur and size are tied to the global animation, if I add some animation offset to these, that's going to make those animations happen after the position animation. Now when I hit play, it's going to slide up and then it's going to scale and come into focus. A lot of times I like bringing this animation offset down a little bit, so that way it starts scaling up while it's still sliding up. It's super easy to create simple animation like that in just a few clicks. As a way to add a little bit more life and energy to it, let's make it so it's also animating in the middle. If I come to the middle tab, I can hit enable middle. Then I'm gonna come down to size and hit enable size. Now when I hit play, it's gonna slide up and it's just gonna have a subtle scale animation throughout the clip. I can change the intensity just by changing the start and end size. And if I want, I can offset the start and end so that way it doesn't start sliding up until say halfway through the animation. Let's say I do 1 second for both of those. Another cool thing is being able to add loops. With this, I can tell it to loop say 5 times throughout the clip, and when I hit play, it's going to slide up and then it's going to bounce between those two sides a bunch of times, and then eventually it's going to animate out at the end. Extremely easy to do. At any point, I can come over to the style tab, I can enable either a bar or an outline, and that's just going to follow the animation throughout the clip. And a really cool part is being able to enable a follower with just 1 click. Now when I hit play, it's going to add a delay between all those letters for all the animations. Alright, let's make a different animation. Let's grab another version of the text and come over to the Anim tab. For this one, I'm going to enable the size as well as enable the rotation. Just by doing that, this is what it looks like so far. Back under the controls tab, I'm going to add a space in between whip and text. Now under rotation, I can change how the rotation is actually applied. So if I turn the word rotation on, not only is it going to animate the rotation on the line, but also on the word level. I can turn it off on the line if I want, so it just animates with the words, or I can turn it on for the line, the word, and the character all at once. Let's say I bring the start angle up to 180 degrees. When I hit play now, the animation is just going to look really crazy. I also have the option to enable pitch and yaw. This allows me to change the actual perspective of the letters, and again, this happens on a line, a character, or a word level depending on what you have turned on down below. So overall, just some really crazy stuff. Under the middle tab, I'm going to enable middle and come down to shake and just hit enable shake. This has way more controls than you'll ever need, but normally what I do is just change the speed, bring the wobble down. I can change the X and Y strength to whatever I want, as well as the zoom and the rotate strength. Now I have this cool rotation, and then it just has some nice camera movement throughout the entire clip. And of course, it animates out at the end. All right, third animation, let's add in a bounce. For this one, what I'm gonna do is set the position to be 0, so that way it puts it at the bottom of the screen. Then if I grab the V anchor, I can set this to be the bottom, so that way the text is touching the bottom of the screen like that. Now over on the animation tab, I can come down to position and enable the position. If I bring the start direction up, I want to put this at 90 degrees, so that way it'll fall from the top down to the bottom. Then I'll grab the start offset and drag it up so this comes off the screen. Right now it'll just move down to the bottom of the screen. Inside the Anim engine, we can change the easing. I want to change this in value to be none and then the out value to be bounce. Now it's going to bounce a few times before it ends up in the resting destination. And of course I can change the length of the actual animation, and all of that is going to update accordingly. Okay, and for the last animation, let's do some elastic motion. I'm going to throw this one right down here in the corner and come to the animation tab. First, we're going to animate the rotation just so we can easily see what's going on. When I come to the beginning, it's just going to rotate 90 degrees. Then I also want to animate the position. And when I enable that, it's going to slide down again. So let's bring the start direction to be 0. So that way it slides off the side of the screen over here. Then I can just move the start offset until I start to see the text and just make it so it's not quite as intense. That's going to cause it to slide in like that. In the position, I can add a start arc. So if I make that something like 65, instead of going in a straight line, it's going to add in an arc when it animates. So this is what we have now. To make those two animations work better together, I'm going to come into the rotate and set this to be -90 instead of 90 degrees. Now this is what we have. Let's come up to the easing, set the in value to be none and the out value to be elastic. When I do elastic animations, I like to bring the length up to 1.5 or 2 seconds long, and that just makes everything look a lot more smooth. For this, we can come down and enable motion blur. This is only going to render motion blur when stuff is actually animating, so that way it's going to render as fast as possible. And whip text is just one tool in the editor collection. It goes great with its counterpart whip animate that has most of the same controls for animating images and videos. Learn more about that and all the other tools at the link down below.